This is Hashtag History, episode 88. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And boy, do we have a story ahead of us today. And I use the word story intentionally because who even knows if what we will be discussing today is actual true history or not.
So excited.
Today we will be discussing Henri Charriere. And if that name does not sound familiar to you at all, perhaps the name Papillon does. Charriere, or as he was nicknamed, Papillon, was a condemned prisoner that was sent to one of the most infamous prisons in history in French Guiana, known as Devil's Island. After 8 escape attempts, Charriere finally successfully escaped the notoriously impossible to escape prison, living the latter part of his life as a free man when he was pardoned by the French justice system for his alleged crime. In 1968, when Charriere was 62 years old, he published an autobiography titled Papillon, in which he detailed the wild stories of his incarceration and escape from Devil's Island. This book was an immediate success and is nowadays considered a modern classic. By the time Charriere passed away in 1973, more than 5 million copies of the book have been sold. To this day, there are more than 200 editions of the book, and it has been sold in 21 different languages. This book was adapted into a film in 1973 starring Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, and another movie adaptation was made in 2017 starring Charlie Hunnam and Rami Malek. You haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, I've seen it. The validity of the Papillon book continues to be called into question, however, as it is believed that this book can't possibly be a true autobiography of Charriere's experiences. In fact, it is more often than not believed that many of the experiences he wrote about in Papillon were either total works of fiction or were indeed real, but had actually occurred to other inmates and not to him. Mm-hmm. That's why when you look up this book online, you will sometimes find it in the autobiography section, the autobiographical novel section, the semi-biography section, and sometimes just straight up in the fiction section.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to dive into the story. But first, you all know we have a little something else to dive into before we can begin.
Yep.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
Okay, final shout out to the Existential Ginger for
Yay!
The third of the 3 cocktails that she sponsored.
She's amazing.
Yeah. Go check out the Existential Ginger podcast on all streaming platforms.
Yes, be sure to go do that. We had the pleasure of doing a guest episode with her not too long ago, and that was really, really fun. So check that out and then listen to everything else she does.
Yes. So this week's cocktail is fittingly the Papillon cocktail. Cocktails and Rocktails, 200 Drinks to Shake, Rattle, and Roll With by Jane Roca.
Oh, cool.
Is actually where you can find this particular Papillon cocktail, although there are multiple different types of Papillon cocktails online. So it contains 2 small cucumber wheels.
Mm-hmm. I love cucumber.
Yeah, I don't. It's growing on me slowly, thanks to tzatziki.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also contains gin.
Which is also more than growing on you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Apple liqueur.
Which smells like
amazing.
A perfume that I would wear.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Lime juice. Elderflower cordial.
Which we love.
And I never know if I'm pronouncing that right. Cordial? Cordial?
Not a clue. Elderflower.
Mm-hmm. And then you can garnish with a slice of cucumber. So you're supposed to muddle the cucumber in the shaker and then add all the rest of the ingredients. And then you double strain it into a martini glass.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It looks dangerous because it's clear and all liquor, minus the lime juice.
It's so intense, but so good.
It's unlike anything I've ever had before, right? I don't know how to describe it.
It's good. It really does kind of remind me of cleaning, like not in a bad way.
Cleaning products?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We said we were smelling it before this and we were like, it kind of smells like cleaning products, like Pine Sol or something.
I do love the smell of Pine Sol.
Yeah, and it definitely, the aftertaste, it's kind of Pine Sol-y, but not in a bad way.
You know what it tastes like? Because of the apple, It tastes like a Jolly Rancher.
Yes.
It's almost like sweet and sour like a Jolly Rancher.
Totally.
But then it's very floral because of the elderflower and the gin.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I don't know how else to say it other than it's unlike anything I've ever had before, and I really super love it.
Yeah, it's good.
Your rating?
9?
Mine's a 9. We're back on schedule.
We're back on track here, guys.
Back on track. Yay!
Yay!
We don't know too much about Henri Charriere's early life, other than that he was born in 1906 at, I'm hoping to pass this off to you, Leah, for pronunciation.
Saint-Étienne de Ludgares. Oh, there's more. Ardèche, France.
That was beautiful.
I don't know if it's right. I can't make guarantees here.
How I would pronounce it is Southern France. So we know that he lost his mother when he was only 10 years old. In 1923, when he was just 17, he joined the French Navy. And after 2 years of service, he joined the Paris underworld.
What is that?
I'm glad that you asked. So, I of course had to do some diving into what exactly the Paris underworld was. So the Paris underworld, otherwise known as how do you pronounce it?
Les Apaches.
However you said
Les
it.
Apaches. Say it.
Les Apaches.
Beautiful.
Which was named after the misconstrued belief that the Native American Apache tribe was particularly violent. This underworld was a subculture of violent gangs, muggers, and other criminals in Paris in the early 20th century. Members of the underworld made a living targeting the middle class and stealing from them. It was a pretty exclusive, quote-unquote, club. Members of the underworld wore similar clothing, spoke in similar slang, and behaved in similar violent patterns.
Why?
Charriere became known by another name due to a tattoo that he had on his chest. I thought we might check out a picture here and you could describe what the tattoo is, Leah.
Oh,
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. It's a butterfly.
It's a butterfly. So for those that don't know, aka me, Papillon is the French word for butterfly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I knew that. High school French bitches.
She even flicked her hair back when she said, I knew that. I did not. So as a result of this tattoo, Charriere got the nickname of Papillon, and that's really how he was known. While working in the underworld, though, Charriere became known for something else as well. He was really, really good at cracking safes. He was also known to do his fair share of stealing, and according to what accounts you gather your information from, some also report that he was a pimp. And then, in 1931, everything would change for Charriere. Mm-hmm. In October of that year, Charriere would be convicted of the murder of another pimp named Roland Le Petit, despite his denying of the allegation over and over again. To this day, we still do not know exactly why Charriere was charged with the crime. It's believed that the French authorities just wanted to resolve the case quickly, and Charriere became the scapegoat. Either way, he was convicted, and as punishment for the crime, he was sentenced to life in prison, along with 10 years of hard labor. He was sent to French Guiana, a prison colony. There were a number of prisons here. And to save us some time, basically just know he served time at a number of various prisons in this colony and would escape from virtually every single one of them, according to his book. In accordance with his book, Charriere first attempted to escape from the island on November 28th, 1933. Impressively, he actually did pretty well before he was captured in Colombia nearly 40 days later. He later escaped again and, get this, actually lived among a local native tribe for a period of time. According to his book, he even took on wives and impregnated them during his time with this group. Mm-hmm. When he left the group, he would shortly thereafter be captured once again and sent back to prison. Mm-hmm. And eventually, after one too many prison escapes, he was transported to what was the most infamous prison in French Guiana, Devil's Island.
This is all giving me, like, The Rock. And
yeah. It's very much, we are actually going to reference Alcatraz shortly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a lot of The Rock references here.
Not Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
We are not referring to that Rock. We're referring to the Alcatraz Rock.
Correct.
I'm surprised you haven't seen the movie. Yeah. Did you see the original movie?
No.
Wow.
Never. I've heard of Papillon. I didn't actually know what the story was.
Cool.
So.
That makes me even more excited.
Yeah.
Now, this is where my research totally derailed because my curious mind had to know everything there is to know about this Devil's Island. Yeah. And after all of the research I did, I found that we could literally make an entire episode about just Devil's Island. That's not the point of this episode.
Yeah.
So I won't linger on it too long, but it's all just too fascinating to pass up.
Put it on the list.
Yep, it has been added to the list.
Okay.
Devil's Island was a 34.6-acre French penal colony that ran from the years of 1852 to 1953, and they would house some of whom were the most infamous criminals in history. Devil's Island was known for its exceptionally harsh treatment toward prisoners. Prisoners were assigned to work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. They were given wooden blocks to use as pillows.
No, that's cruel and unusual punishment. Like,
I would agree
I'm
with
joking, but it also really...
I would agree with that. And if you want to, speak to cruel and unusual punishment, depending upon how, quote unquote, dangerous you were as a prisoner, some prisoners even had their feet bolted into restraints every night before going to bed.
Could you imagine having to stay in the same position for the whole night?
No, absolutely not.
I twist and turn constantly.
Ditto.
Who knows how Nico puts up with me?
The really singular argument my husband and I have is how much I steal the blanket at night, and that's because I am constantly rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and just pulling the blanket off of him. Prisoners were forbidden from doing everyday things like reading, talking, and even sitting down during the daytime.
This is straight from Les Mis.
Yes.
Prisoner 614. Is that his name? Is that the number?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you what to do. Like, I don't actually know. I'm not that familiar with Les Mis, but... Sorry.
No,
but right?
That was great. The unbelievably small prison cells all had grated ceilings so that the guards could walk along the top of them and peer down inside at the inmates. In addition to this treatment, the climate surrounding this prison was horrendous. Mm-hmm. It's an island and it's tropical, which by nature leads to a lot of disease. In fact, at its height, the death rate for Devil's Island between the horrendously hard labor and the equally horrendous living conditions was 75%. I think of it similarly to Alcatraz. We already kind of mentioned that. Alcatraz Island, we have covered it on the podcast many, many moons ago.
Was that like season 3?
I don't know.
I think it was.
I wouldn't even attempt to recall. Basically, for anyone that doesn't know, Alcatraz was a federal penitentiary on an island off the coast of San Francisco that housed some of the most infamous American prisoners. Due to the harsh weather conditions, being surrounded by freezing, sharp ocean water, escape from Alcatraz was virtually impossible. Mm-hmm. Devil's Island was similar. In fact, there's a quote from one guard who said, quote, "We have two guardians, the jungle and the sea. Mm-hmm. If you don't get eaten by sharks or your bones picked clean by ants, you will soon beg to return. Then you will be severely punished. You will get locked up in solitary. The first attempt will get you 2 years. The second attempt will get you 5, unquote.
Holy.
Okay. And get this, because this is maybe the craziest thing we're going to say this entire episode.
Oh.
In the 1850s, France established a new law which made it so that once a prisoner had served out his sentence in French Guiana, they had to stay in French Guiana.
Ew, why?
They weren't allowed to leave. Rather, when they completed their sentence, they were given a small piece of land in the colony and forced to live there for a period of time equal to their original prison sentence. Or, if their original sentence had been more than 8 years, they were forced to live on their little piece of land for the remainder of their life.
They must have really wanted to build up Guyana, like the French government. Mm-hmm. They must have wanted to make it like a colony.
And essentially, to me, that's life imprisonment.
Oh,
no?
Yes. Regardless of whether you've done good or done any sort of rehabilitation or anything. I know that's silly talking about the 1800s rehabilitation. But...
yeah.
Yeah,
that's life imprisonment.
That's life imprisonment because it sounds like a hellhole.
Yes, and you're
even after you get out, you're not allowed to leave.
Mm-hmm. So even if you happen to be in that 25% of people that managed to survive the harsh living conditions, the likelihood of actually ever getting off the island were incredibly slim. Likely the most infamous prisoner of Devil's Island was Alfred Dreyfus, who in 1894 was convicted of treason, having been accused of being a spy for the Germans. There was zero evidence to convict Dreyfus of the crime. In fact, the letters containing military secrets that had been provided to the Germans didn't even match Dreyfus's handwriting. Most historians agree that Dreyfus's guilt was based on nothing more than the fact that he was a Jewish man at a time when French Catholic anti-Semitism permeated the country. Dreyfus's innocence would eventually be revealed and he would be exonerated, but not before suffering 4 long years in an isolated cabin on Devil's Island where he was forced to remain in solitude and not speak to any other prisoners, succumbed to illnesses, and suffered many injuries. There was one other Devil's Island prisoner who was just as infamous, if not more, and that was none other than Henri Charriere, or Papillon. In fact, the reason why we know so much about the inner workings of Devil's Island is because of Charriere and his eventual expose of the treatment that he received there. Mm-hmm. Now, for this portion of my research, I pulled directly from Charriere's book because, well, that's the only resource when it comes to what he experienced while in French Guiana. The book Papillon tells the story of how Charriere never gave up on his attempts to escape from the island, including a story about how he actually stabbed a man to death for spilling the beans about an escape that he and other inmates were planning. He told the story of, at one time, fearing that he was to be sentenced to death, he actually feigned insanity, as it was against the rules to sentence insane prisoners to death. Additionally, he hoped that being transferred to the asylum on the island would grant him better odds of escaping, as the asylum was known to be less heavily guarded than the other facilities on the island. He told a crazy story about saving one of the prison guard's daughters from the shark-infested waters that surrounded the island, or another wild story about how he overheard other prisoners recounting their own escape attempt and how they eventually had to resort to cannibalism and to using the peg leg of one of the men they had eaten as a means of starting a fire.
Couldn't have just taken the leg, left the body?
What do you mean?
They didn't have to cannibalize someone for his leg.
They ate everybody.
Oh,
he's not the only person they ate.
Got it. It wasn't for the leg that they cannibalized.
No, perhaps I didn't relay the story well. There was a lot of cannibalism, and a side benefit to that was, oh, we also have a wooden leg. Let's start a fire. Essentially, this book is wild and crazy and really paints Charriere as the determined, inspiring, hardcore protagonist.
Yeah.
We've told you all before, time and time again, that we are a part of a book club.
What? We have? Have we mentioned that?
Yeah, I think at least 500 times.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Something else we mentioned a lot is how, as grown adults with full-time jobs, a side podcast gig, and other everyday responsibilities, it can be hard to find the time to read.
Right. So that's why we oftentimes use audiobooks, and Audible is a great resource for that.
Audible is the leading provider in spoken word entertainment and audiobooks. They have titles ranging from news, self-development, business, fiction, and more.
Not only do they have audiobooks, they also have podcasts, wellness guidance programs like guided meditations, and more.
The best thing about Audible is that you can download titles to listen to offline, anytime and anywhere, across all devices without losing your spot.
And Audible has thousands of titles for you to choose from. Maybe pick one of our recent favorites, such as The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix,
Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow.
That was a good one. I love that one. Try out a free 30-day trial now when you use our link at www.audibletrial.com/history.
That's www.audibletrial.com/history.
Charriere would serve 7 years on the island before, in the early 1940s, he made what would be his 8th and final escape. He studied the waters and discovered that every 7th wave was larger than the others.
That's not mathematically accurate, bud.
Are you calling fallacy?
Fallacy.
Are you calling fallacy?
Fallacy.
We haven't even gotten to that part yet.
Okay.
But in his book, he said that he had studied the waters. He discovered that every 7th wave was larger than the others, and it was large enough that it could actually carry floating objects out to sea with it.
Very
scientific data.
Scientific.
With this information in mind, he and another inmate used a bag of coconuts to create a makeshift raft. You look like you're really believing this. Okay. He and the other inmate would manage to make it on this coconut raft through shark-infested water all the way to the shore of French Guiana, where his buddy would drown in quicksand. Yeah. Charriere, having survived the voyage, would eventually settle in Venezuela, where he was given citizenship, got married, had a family, ran a couple of restaurants, all the things. And then he started writing. In 1968, Henri Charriere released his autobiography titled Papillon, in which he detailed his life in French Guiana, particularly his time on Devil's Island, the horrendous treatment that he received there, and his wonderful, miraculous escape. Here's the thing, though. When French authorities looked back through their records following the release of Charriere's best-selling novel, they found something interesting. Henri Charriere had never been a prisoner of Devil's Island.
Oops.
Are you shocked?
I actually am shocked by that. I thought he was just exaggerating.
Yeah. So rather, French records show that he served the majority of his time at a different prison in French Guiana, where he was assigned to the position of a nursing assistant. It's reported that while there, he, for the most part, kept his nose down, did his nursing duties, and simply got by. Not exactly the heroic tale of a man determined to escape his fate, right? While in prison, he listened to the wild tales of other inmates that told about their many escape attempts. There are records that indicate that Charriere did indeed escape, but certainly not as many times as the book details. It's also interesting to note that in actuality, of the 70,000 prisoners sent to French Guiana, only about 50 of them were actually sent to Devil's Island. Devil's Island was reserved primarily for political prisoners, such as Alfred Dreyfus, that we mentioned him earlier. Additionally, and this is just the skeptic in me, but I do find it interesting that the only person that could corroborate Charriere's account of being at Devil's Island and making this miraculous escape on a coconut raft supposedly succumbed to quicksand. Just 30 years before the publication of Papillon, there had been another book published titled, I'm hoping you can help,
La guillotine sèche?
Or in English, Dry Guillotine. This book was written by a man named René Belbenoit and was an autobiography of his own incarceration and subsequent escape from none other than the prisons in French Guiana. There are some pretty astonishing similarities between the two books. For one, Belbenoit and Charriere wrote that upon escaping from one of the prisons in French Guiana, they had, for a period of time, lived amongst an indigenous tribe where they had taken on wives before being captured. That's a pretty wild story to be duplicated.
Yeah, probably.
I think so. You escaped a prison
In French Guiana,
joined and were accepted by an indigenous tribe, and then married women while you were there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty wild story.
That's pretty
Only
wild.
to be captured and put back in prison.
Yeah.
Also, remember the story I mentioned earlier about how Charriere had overheard another escape attempt in which the group had resorted to cannibalism, and then they had used the peg leg of one of the men they had eaten as a kindler for a fire? Could it just be a crazy coincidence that in Belbenoit's autobiography, he described being with a group of inmates escaping from the prison in which they ended up resorting to cannibalism and using the wooden leg of a fellow inmate that they had eaten to kindle a fire? And he described this in his book 30 years before the publication of Papillon. It should be noted that Charriere never said that he was involved in this particular escape attempt where this cannibalism and the wooden leg incident occurred, while Belbenoit stated that he had been a part of the group. But isn't that a bit too wild and too unique of a story for this to just be a coincidence? Did Charriere ever actually overhear this story, or did he just take it from Belbenoit's book? Also, remember that wild story about how Charriere saved a little girl from being eaten alive by sharks?
Yeah.
Of course, how could you forget? Maybe it will come as no surprise then that there are zero records of such an incident involving Charriere. Rather, there are records of another inmate doing just that, saving a little girl from the shark-infested waters, but this other inmate would actually lose both of his legs during the feat and would later die as a result.
So I want to know, I'm assuming that Papillon was like somehow involved with the record keeping of this island or something.
That's possible.
Because how else would you know all these little stories that come out of it unless you are actually a prisoner there and hear it from other prisoners?
Yeah. And from French records, they do say that, yes, he was a prisoner in French Guiana and he was working as a nursing assistant. But for the most part, like, kind of kept his head down.
So he nursed the guy whose leg got taken off.
Good point.
He nursed the guy whose legs got bitten off by a shark.
I do think that's a great point. I do think if you are, kind of assigned a duty and, according to these records are the type that like just kind of keeps your nose down. Maybe you observe and you consume and absorb a lot of this information. Doesn't necessarily mean it happened to you.
Yeah.
There are some people that are so ardently question the validity of Papillon that they actually wrote their own books to debunk it. One such book was written by a former journalist named Gerard de Vie. In 1970, he published a book titled, in English, Butterfly Pinned, in which he completely tore apart Papillon. He noted inconsistency after inconsistency in this so-called autobiography, backing up each of his claims with records and facts. In fact, Davier would go so far as to say, quote, only about 10% of Charriere's book represents the truth, unquote. Another journalist named Georges Ménager published his book titled, in English, The Four Truths of Papillon, in which he also tore apart the credibility of Charriere's prison tales. Even Truman Capote, most famously known for writing In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's, which obviously would later be adapted into a film starring Audrey Hepburn.
And a song in the 90s.
Yes. Even he was quoted as calling Charriere a liar and a fraud.
Mm-hmm. Did Charriere ever explicitly say, this was my story, this is truth, this is real, this is actually what happened to me? Am I skipping ahead?
I appreciate your curious mind.
Okay.
All questions will be answered.
Okay.
Most questions will be answered. I shouldn't guarantee that they all will.
Yeah. Okay.
Possibly most damning to Charriere's validity was when a man named Charles Brunier came forward in 2005 at the age of 104 years old and declared that he, and not Henri Charriere, was indeed the true Papillon.
Did he have the tattoo? Then off, Henry.
Brunier had served in the First World War and was even awarded medals for saving a lieutenant's life. That was all before his military medals would be stripped away from him when he was later convicted of armed robbery and murder. He was sent to a prison in French Guiana, interestingly, the same prison as Charriere, and claimed that many of the experiences described in the Papillon book actually depicted either his own experiences or those he knew to be of their fellow inmates. It's also interesting that on Brunier's chest, he had a tattoo of a butterfly.
Oh my God.
For Charriere himself, he continued to insist that his book was indeed an autobiography and a true depiction of his experiences of incarceration and escape. If anything, he admitted perhaps 25% of the book was not accurate, but that was only because he did not have a typewriter while in prison and perhaps suffered a couple of lapses of memory.
25 is a large percentage.
25 is a very large percentage. I can get saying like, okay, maybe just
like
to
5, maybe 10%.
I was going to say 5.
Yeah.
5% would be acceptable to like, maybe some transitions aren't seamless.
Yeah.
You know?
But 25, that's a quarter. That's a literal quarter.
Yes.
Of your story isn't possibly not true, bud.
Because of lapses of memory and because I didn't have a typewriter.
I didn't have a typewriter
in prison.
So my memory isn't right.
When Papillon was published in 1968, it became an instant bestseller, selling more than 700,000 copies in the first 10 weeks. Charriere himself was treated as a minor celebrity, and due to this heightened popularity, the French justice system actually issued a pardon to Charriere in 1970 for his original 1931 murder conviction.
Thanks.
Only a few years after the publication of the book, Charriere would pass away on July 29th, 1973 from throat cancer. He would never see the full success of the book, with the 1973 film of the same name, starring Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, going on to be nominated for numerous Oscars and Golden Globe Awards.
Nice.
This movie would be remade, like we already mentioned, in 2017 with another successful film adaptation, this one starring Charlie Hunnam and Rami Malek.
I have never heard of this. And
I've watched it and it was really good.
I like Rami.
Yeah, they both were really great. The true story of Papillon will forever be a mystery. If you can get past the inconsistencies and inaccuracies and just accept the book as a work of fiction, I think you will join one of the millions of other people around the world that have loved it.
Yeah. I would say I would love to read it knowing it's not necessarily
historically accurate.
But as a work of fiction, like The Jungle. Have you ever heard about that book, The Jungle?
Yes.
How that's not nobody looks at that as like this is exactly what happened, but it's like a depiction of the time period in New York City in slaughterhouses at that time. You know what I mean? Like,
and I think maybe if Charriere had presented himself more that way, is like, this is an exaggeration on what I experienced. Or
I would respect that so much more.
Or this may include not only my own experiences, but the experiences of other inmates. Instead, he continued to say this is totally true. And then when questioned, like,
maybe some of it's not true.
Maybe some of it's not true, but only because of lapses of memory, not because I fabricated or exaggerated things.
Yeah. See, I lose respect for that.
Yes.
I mean, if you paint it as, this is is from my experience and other people's experience, and then I painted this picture for you to understand overarchingly what was happening at that time.
Yes.
Then I'd be like, yeah, sign me up. Sign me up.
Like, and I think we love that. We love reading like historical fictions, knowing that not everything is true, but it still gives, like you kind of said, like an umbrella context to the time period. Mm-hmm. And then we all love a little fiction. Mm-hmm. You know, life isn't always that exciting. So sometimes it's nice to kind of exaggerate things, right?
Yeah.
But if you are not able necessarily to accept it as, you know, a work of fiction or an exaggerated account, you may have a reaction similar to that of one French minister who, when asked what he considered to be the great attributes to, quote, the moral decline of France, unquote, he said, miniskirts, of course.
When was this? 1965.
And Papillon. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Hashtag History.
We will share the picture that we discussed on the episode to our Instagram, and all sources used to put together the episode can be found on our website at hashtaghistory-pod.com.
Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use, share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
And then circling back to Instagram, you can find us on there at #history_podcast. You can also find us on TikTok at #history and on Twitter at #history_.
And come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. You will get automatic access to some behind the scenes content, weekly #hangout episodes, and we also mail you cards and stickers.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, I think that I am recording now. Yeah, I am. He published it in an autobiography. Oh my god, I am drunk.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not. The food helps.
Nope, I am. The autobiography. Oh my god. Exactly, the Paris underworld was. I'm drunk.
You're drunk. Just silence. Like a quiet little in the background.
Oh man. What? The nickname. I'm drunk. Got the nickname, which is the worst episode to be drunk on when I can't pronounce really half the words.
Yeah, that's bad.
Oh my god. No. That doesn't make sense.
My side floating. Comes untucked. Certainly my fault.
Your side?
Your side?
Not my fault.
Not me.
That would not be my fault.
I definitely...
Grated cheese?
Yeah. I pictured it was because, like, if they tried to escape, it would
slice their fingers them. Like cheese?
Yeah, just like cheese.
I meant like there are holes in it like this. Grated.
No, I got that.
Okay. Yeah. In addition to his 11th and final escape.
You said 11th.
Why would I even say 11th?
You just said 11.
I heard it. I don't even know how I would come up with the 11th out of 8. He studied... Yeah. Woo. You will get automatic access. You will get automatic access. I was just trying to shake it up a little. Henri Charriere.
Yeah.
Charriere. Should I say it that way?
Charriere.
I can't do that. But should I say Charriere?
Charriere.
Charriere. La Petite.
Le Petite.
Le Petite. Charriere.
You've gone back and forth.
Oh god. Belle Noire. Belle Benoit. Belle Benoit. No, bad.
Épingle.
Épingle. Oh my god, I have no idea. I don't know any of these.
George.
Say
George, but with the soft G's.
George.
J's.
George.
Ménagère. Ménagère.
Ménagère. I can do that.